Another beautiful day. Going to be in the high 70s again today, maybe up to 80 again. This is about the longest stretch of nice weather we've had in years. So I'm trying to get as many projects done outside here as I can. I got that project done yesterday. That's the fish sticks, barricade sticks for the fish ladder. So that project is done. You can see we got a lot of piles of wood around here, a lot of projects to do. I think the next project that I'm going to work on is this one here. That's a 300-gallon fuel tank a friend of mine gave me in exchange for something I did for his dad. This was his dad's fuel tank. It's a brand new fuel tank, was never used, and I did something for his dad, and then when his dad passed away he gave me that in payment for it, and I didn't expect any payment for what I did. And I've had that for several years out here with the intent of using it for a diesel fuel tank. We've got all this equipment around here, the Bobcat and three excavators and a tractor that all use diesel, and we've got to haul it in 5-gallon cans every time we haul fuel, and got to go down to the gas station and get it, and of course pay gas station prices with all the tax and everything on it. And I'm getting to where I don't like handling those 5-gallon cans, hoisting them up shoulder high or head high to dump fuel in a tank anymore. So I've got everything to set up, or nearly everything to set up a fuel tank to run. Now, this has been a project for a few years now. Right there, I just dug them out. Those have been stacked up in a lumber stack, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or more maybe. I milled those up and then stacked them up with the intent of building a stand for that fuel tank so we can gravity feed the fuel out of the tank. And then I want to build the stand, sides of it tall enough that I can put a roof over the tank so we don't have to worry about water, snow and stuff like that getting in it. So that's the project of the day today. Well, I've got 4 6x6s there for post for uprights, and then I've got some, I think they're 2.5 or almost 3-inch by 6-inch timbers there to use for cross bracing and stuff like that. The first thing I'll do is get those 6x6s out and get those measured to length. Well, I guess I got to go up to the tank. I've forgotten what the diameter of the tank is, so I want those 6x6s wider than the diameter of the tank, just the width, inside width of the 6x6s. And we'll set about building a stand for the fuel tank. Then we can get them to come and deliver fuel and won't have to haul it in 5-gallon buckets anymore, 5-gallon cans anymore. Except when I've got a piece of equipment out the road someplace working, either hauling rock or logging or whatever we happen to do, where we take the Bobcat or another piece of equipment out into the woods, and of course I'll have to haul fuel for that. But won't have to go to town to get fuel every time I need it anyway. That tank is almost exactly 48 inches in diameter, and it's a little over 6 feet long. So I want the stand about 6 feet long. I also want a roof over it, so I want it down 48 inches from the top. Well, those timbers are 2 3/4 inches thick and 8 inches wide, and those things are just about as dry as they're ever going to be. So if I put a notch in those big timbers, the 6x6s, and inset those into the notch, and theirs are going to be as tight as they're ever going to be. Anything else they'll collect moisture and they'll swell up and be tight in the notch. So one of the problems with making notches and putting insetting timbers in it is when they're green or whatever, when you do that and the timbers dry out, then the notches get loose and sloppy. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a couple notches in for cross braces, and that'll be what the fuel tank sits on. And then I'll have to spread those timbers out, put the cross pieces in. I have to measure out 48 inches inside to inside on the big timbers. And then once I get those spread out and I put the cross pieces in, then I'll put diagonals in on both end pieces. And then we'll worry about doing longitudinal pieces. I was going to set that big skill saw, the Sasquatch, up for running grooves, notches in those timbers. And I just decided I didn't want to handle that thing for that. I've got other saws that I can use that'll do that just fine. I went looking for one, and of course it took me 35-40 minutes to find one. And then I dug out a big wide chisel that I use for cleaning those notches out with. Probably have to take it in and sharpen it. I think my wife's been using it for a screwdriver and a can opener as usual. Anyway, I'll go ahead and set up that saw for making a notch in this timbers. Well, I think I'll make my notches 2 inches, and that'll leave 3/4 of an inch sticking out, which won't hurt anything. Alright, I made a decision. I decided that I've been out here in the sun bareheaded too much, so I went up in the house and found my straw hat that's been up there for years that I haven't used. The last time I used it when we were down in Florida, I think, or anyway down south. So I come to another conclusion. I want the rim joists, or whatever you want to call them, that are going to be the long side of this, to overhang the tank on both ends. More on the front end, on the end that has the outlet, the opening and stuff, than the back end. But I want it to hang over, so when I put the roof over it, it overhangs the tank and protects it from the weather, from the snow and the rain. The top cross piece is the one that's going to carry the weight of the fuel tank, and so I want those to be the 2 3/4 inch timbers, and then I can just go ahead and use that 2-inch 2x8 for one of the bottom ones for the cross to go across. Anyway, I'll go ahead and square up those 2 3/4 inch timbers. Then I'll turn those timbers and cut notches in the timbers for the long pieces there, for the long side. My cross pieces are all set up, and I've got my post set up for a new notch. I got them matched up in pairs there. Not very square. I put a shim underneath it so that it would square up with the other notch that's in there. These notches are going to be for the long side. If I just left them there where they're out of square, then they won't match. Then the seats of the notches won't match up. Anyway, it's ready to go, but I think I better go sit in the shade a little bit. I got to go find a towel and wipe some of this liquid that's leaking out of my body off my face and glasses. That saw wasn't really cutting too good when I cut those notches out. Went and dug out a new blade, put on the saw. Hopefully that'll cut a little better. And I found a sweatband. My skin has been leaking fluid out of it so bad here today that it's getting down on my glasses and my eyes and I can't hardly see. So I got my sweatband, found it hanging there, and I put it on. See if that helps any. That saw is old, been through a lot of battles here. I set it to 2 inches just on the gauge on the saw, which is close enough for what I needed. But the doggone lock on the handle slipped and it wound up going down to 2.5 inches halfway through that first cuts there, the first 2 timbers. I watched it and it was okay on the second 2 timbers, but that's kind of frustrating. Alright, I got the notches cut. So now what I'm going to do is take 2 of those timbers and lay those out to put the 60-inch timbers in there. The sawhorses aren't wide enough to do that on because it's going to be 5 feet wide, 4 feet inside. And because the sawhorses are not the same height, I'm going to take one set of sawhorses and put one over here on this side and one over on this side, and then I'll take the set that the 6x6s are on, spread those out that way, and that way they'll kind of balance out, even though it's not, the driveway's not level here. But all right, there's the first one laid out. I've got deer flies harassing me here now. Well, I'm going to go get some screws and screw those down. Now, when I originally was thinking about building that, I was planning on using carriage bolts and go all the way through and bolt that down, but I've got these timber lock screws now and I think I'm going to use those. So I'll go dig some of those out, see what we can do. Well, I went up in my pile, the pile of stuff that was left over from doing the fish sticks, and found a couple of 2x6s up there, yellow cedar 2x6s up there that are just long enough to work as diagonals on this. I brought one of them down here. I'll measure it off and cut it, and I think I'll set it in there and then nail it down. And we'll try to work on getting that thing squared up. Alright, there's one end stand complete. I don't know how I'm going to pick that sucker up now. Bad enough just picking up one of the 6x6s. Surprisingly enough, it came out pretty square. That was good. Oh yeah. What's there, squirrel? Well, that went better than I expected. I stuffed the forks in there underneath that one cross arm. Picked it up, I figured it was going to flip over, but the extended length, the tops of those posts cantilevered underneath the bob tack, and I picked it up just fine, so I was able to get it up out of the way.